Ready?
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Superman and Snoopy and the Angry Birds. Wait, what are these guys doing 100 feet in the air? Oh, they are big helium-filled balloons flying high above New York City streets in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. How many of you have the parade on TV Thanksgiving morning while the turkey dinner is getting started in the kitchen? Well, if NBC has it right, most of you watch the parade on Thanksgiving morning, or at least a portion of it. Dan Lovinger, Executive Vice President at NBC Universal, says that the Macy's Parade is one of our biggest broadcasts of the year, every year, consistently. We'll reach over 50 million nationwide through the live broadcast and live streaming, so it's a massive audience. In her Call the Cat award-winning book, Balloons Over Broadway, author Melissa Sweet describes this well, saying, "Everyone's a New Yorker on Thanksgiving Day. When you're young and old, rise early to see what giant new balloons will fill the skies for Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade." My name is Alyssa Ferris, and I was a participant in the 2015 Macy's Day Parade. Lining up with those balloons near the Museum of Natural History, then marching in the parade with those famous balloons inspired me to learn more about their history. I want to share with you some of what I learned about the history of the Macy's Day balloons. First, we'll take a look at how those balloons came to be. Then we'll take a quick look at some of the early history of those balloons. Let's start by learning about the origins of the now famous balloons, which is detailed beautifully in Melissa Sweet's book, Balloons Over Broadway. The balloons started with an immigrant named Tony Sarg. Macy's hired Sarg to design animated store windows and develop a parade for them in 1924. There were no balloons in the first few parades. Instead, live animals were the main attraction. The animals were on loan from New York's Central Park Zoo. They included elephants, giraffes, lions, tigers, and bears. Those animals made a mess and frightened children on the 6-mile-long parade route. So in 1927, Macy's asked Sarg to replace the live animals. He came up with large balloons that are now almost synonymous with Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Using his background as an illustrator and a puppeteer, Sarg created a cross between a balloon and a puppet that were pushed into the air and carried through the parade on sticks, and became the first of many balloons to come over the next few years. In 1928, Sarg enlisted Goodyear to help make lighter balloons and rubberized silk that could be filled with helium and fly high in the skies of New York City. Goodyear continued to be the parade's balloon producer until 1981, producing nearly 100 balloons. This was the start of the balloons that have become symbolic of the Macy's Day Parade. Authors Robert Grippo and Christopher Hoskins wrote a whole book about the balloon's history. I am just telling you a few of the highlights. If you want to know more about their book, their book gives a pretty detailed history. They say balloon races were advertised for parades in 1928 through 1932. For just these few years, Macy's released the balloons and offered rewards to those who found and returned the balloons with prizes. In 1928, when the balloons were released, they popped. What a disappointment. They didn't realize that the helium expands under pressure, which increases as the balloons rise, and they just burst. Not giving up, the next year, 1929, Macy's put in valves that would slowly release helium and allow balloons to stay in the air. They were supposed to float as far as 100 miles, but people shot at them and fought over them to claim the $100 reward. In 1931, famous aviator Clarice Chamberlain actually captured a giant pig balloon. Then, just a year later, in 1932, 22-year-old pilot Annette Gibson tried to capture a giant tomcat balloon over Jamaica, New York. She is quoted by Grippo and Haskins as saying, "I think I'll have a piece of the neck," as she took aim at the cat. Upon impact, the balloon wrapped around her plane's left wing and caused it to go into a tailspin. She turned the ignition off to prevent fire if the plane crashed. As the plane fell, she and her flight instructor switched seats. She restarted the plane at about 250 feet above rooftops and was able to land the plane safely. She and her instructor survived, but the cat did not. When the plane landed, Gibson reportedly told the reporters who flooded the landing field, "I have something to be thankful for this Thanksgiving." After these accidents, Macy's began deflating balloons each year. Then, just a few years later, in the early 40s, the balloons got a 3-year break. In the life book called America's Parade, a celebration of Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, author Stephen Madden tells us that during World War II, there were no parade and no giant balloons for 3 years. In 1942, 1943, and 1944, 2 things needed for the parade's balloons were rationed due to shortages. Rubber was very scarce. Macy's actually gave the U.S. government 650 pounds of rubber by donating its giant balloons. Helium was also in short supply. Macy's is the second to the government in using up our country's helium, so no more helium, and perhaps an odd coincidence, but parade and balloon creator Tony Sarg also died in 1942. This just makes it even more fitting that the parade took a break that year. According to NBC television, the parade was reintroduced in 1945 and 3 short years later televised nationally for the first time. The balloons gained a national audience and became part of American culture, as millions watched on TV. What Melissa Sweet said in her book is true. We do all become New Yorkers on Thanksgiving's Day. As we look to the skies and TV to see what balloons will be in the parade and visit our old favorites, New York's Macy's Thanksgiving's Day Parade has truly become an American tradition, right alongside our turkey and dressing with over 50 million Americans watching. Now you know a little bit about the origin of the history of these famous balloons. I was lucky enough to see those famous balloons in real life this past Thanksgiving. I hope you have learned something about the history of these famous balloons.